Welcome to Job Sharing and Beyond, the Future of Work podcast that goes beyond the traditional 9 to 5. I am Karin Tischler, speaker, consultant, and host of the show, where we hear from global experts every other week to discover innovative solutions and tips on how to remain a relevant employer in the future. Hello, everyone. I welcome you, my listener, from 44 countries around the world. And today, I am super excited to introduce Tristan Champion, my guest from the 13th country around the world. Tristan Champion is working as digital marketing manager in an international company. He is a 36-year-old French father married to a Norwegian wife. His engagement towards gender equality started when the family decided to move from Paris to Oslo. For the birth of their second child, Tristan experienced the Nordic model of longer and shared parental leave that contrasted with his French experience of 11 days of leave for their first baby. Tristan started to blog about his new everyday life, 5 months alone with his baby. Barbe Papa blog found strong echo within young French parents. He step-by-step analyzed the strengths of the Norwegian model on gender equality, wrote many articles and a book, La Barbe et le Biberon, to raise awareness of the Norwegian model, of which he became an expert. He initiated the creation of a group of French engaged fathers that acted as lobbyists to influence the French government to reform their paternity leave policy. Welcome to the show, Tristan.
Thank you for inviting me. So great to see you, Karin. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for coming. Now, Tristan, we have a lot of people listening to us from all over the world. Could you tell them, please, where you're calling in from, and if there is a particular site or food that they should be checking out if they were to go to your area?
Of course, I'm calling in from Normandy in the west coast of France. Normandy is known for in the World War II for the D-Day when the American came in, and so I'm not so far from those beaches where you can have a nice time in family time. And the best thing that is from Normandy is a cheese and called the Camembert that is worldwide famous, as well as the Calvados, which is a liquor made with apple that I strongly recommend. Very, very lovely region to visit and very nice weather at the moment.
I love cheese, and literally I actually mentioned the Camembert the other day to my children because they had not heard about it. So interesting. Now, Tristan, you're the author of the book, and it's in French, so I will try my best. It's La Barbe et le Biberon.
Yes.
And it is translated into English, the beard and the butter. Could you share with our listeners your professional background and what made you write this book, please?
Yes, for sure. So my professional background is in marketing and digital. So I am working for an international brand called Nespresso at the headquarters at the moment. And I'm leading what we call the CRM department, Customer Relationship Management. My main role is really into marketing and digital communication. And have to say that it is within this role and this environment, this professional environment, that have written my book that is strongly connected with a lot of anecdotes and stories that happen in the job market and in my job. But the book is about parental leave And actually, I wrote this book when I was working in Nespresso, but in Norway, in the northern part of Europe, where I had a very different experience that I used to have when I was living in France before. If I can just explain how the book has been built and written. It all started when I moved to Norway with my wife. She's Norwegian, and we met in Vienna, by the way, in Austria. We are what we called in Europe, we call the Erasmus family. Erasmus is an exchange program for students in Europe in order for us to study abroad, so that when I was in France, I could study in Austria, and she was from Norway and studied also in Austria, in Vienna, and that's where we met. And then we decided to live together, and she spent 5 years in France with me. And after 5 years, we decided to move to Norway. We had our first child in France, and then the second, we had it in Norway. And that's when I discovered the difference on what it is to be a father in France versus to be a father in Norway, that I suddenly decided to really write about the Nordic model and the Scandinavian model, because when we touch about the gender equality and the job market and differences between men and women, mother and father, we all know that we hear that the Nordic, the Scandinavian countries are always best in class, number one in all of the ranking. And I was from France, and I knew that they were advanced, and I was about to experience it for real, like really. From the inside, how come it is so different? And it is extremely different than what I have experienced in France. And it was really astonishing for me when our second child were born, and her name is Nora. And then suddenly I was able to have 5 months of parental leave, fully paid by the state. A period during which I would take care of my child, which was completely different from the French parental leave, where I had only 10 days and then had to go back to work right after. So this is the starting point of my engagement on gender equality, is this parental leave policy in the Nordic. And I started first with a blog called Barbe Papa, which means I'm not sure if this name echoes somehow the listeners of this podcast, but Barbe Papa is a cartoon, but it's also in French. It's a candy that you give to the child just to please them. Usually it's very sweet, and it's pink and big, and it's made with sugar that you turn into you see. It's really, really good. And I gave this name to my blog because when you move to Norway, as a French father, you see a lot of Norwegian guys, 2 meters, very big, very lot of tattoos, a long beard, very, very how I can call it, like masculine in a way, but surprisingly, all very caring with their children, taking a long leave to take care of them. And the first thing that I did when I moved to Norway is also to have a long beard, so that I could look like them. And of course, I could also take care of my baby like they were doing. So I was working for Nespresso, and when the second child was born, I was asking my manager to take 5 months of parental leave. And this day was a big shock for me. And that's the day I decided to really blog, to say, hey, this is what it is here to be a man in Norway versus in France. The point of being of being able to take so long parental leave was very different to me. And one thing that was different was the fact that in Norway, it's not only longer, it's not only fully paid, but it's the father or the second parent, to be more correct, is taking the leave right after the first parent, not at the same time, but after each other. Meaning that the woman or my wife was starting, and then I was continuing it. So it doesn't mean only that you are taking care of a kid, but you are taking care of your kid alone, on your own. You are fully accountable, responsible of the education. And I didn't have any families, not my mother, my sister. So I really had to take it on myself. I have no one to cheat with to support me in a way. So all of this accountability and responsibility was very different from my French experience. And I started to blog about it and to tell all of the stories that I had of being alone with my child during 5 months. And one thing that probably was totally astonishing for me was the job market, because I was so afraid of taking 5 months leave for my career, because in my culture, in the French culture, nobody is doing that. None of my colleagues, not my fathers did not do that. My brother neither. None of my friends, cousins, or colleagues stop so long to take parental leave and to quit their job more than maybe 2 weeks. So to do that, for me, it was very difficult, because I thought that my manager would perceive me as less concerned by my work. I thought I would somehow damage my career. I was also asking for a promotion at the same time, and I thought that my 5 months of parental leave could be a barrier to this promotion. And I was, by the way, experiencing what a lot of women were experiencing. And for me, it was new, but a lot of the followers that I had just say, hey, this is what we have as women. It's our daily life, so it's not really new. But I think it was somehow new, because for a man, even though it can be debatable, we can agree or disagree, but I find it even more difficult because it's not the norm. For me, it was not the norm. So when I started to blog about it, about parenting, I was afraid that none of future employer would like to have me, because I'm talking about my personal life with my kids. It shows some indirect signs that I'm not so interested in the job, maybe. And for women, I feel it's maybe only a perception, but it's more accepted. It's natural that they leave 3-4 months after they gave birth. While for men, I find it a bit more difficult, because as you have the choice, somehow it's you as a man that is actively doing the choice not to go to work. I'm not sure if I'm clear, if you see what I mean, but for me, it was very difficult in that sense. And I was helped by the fact that in Norway, it's completely the norm. 70% of Norwegian fathers take at least 3 months of parental leave. So it's in a way, I was reassured by that I'm doing like everybody. It was very important. And that made the decision much easier to go to the office of my manager and to ask for 5 months of parental leave. So that's how the blog started. Just in your face, 5 months parental leave of a Latin guy that is not used to that. And I was afraid. I have to be honest. I was afraid, because what am I going to do during 5 months? It's not everyone that is used to take care so long of a kid. As I told you, I was alone because my wife was going back to work. So I had to in a way find a lot of activities not to get bored. I had to be able to do to take care of a kid 100% of my time, respecting all of the diet, the sleeping, and making sure that my kid was growing correctly. So it was also a lot of pressure in a way. So it was not so easy to make that decision, especially that in Norway, the system is quite flexible and egalitarian, because the couple can still decide how long they will take of parental leave. When you have a child, you have 10 months that you can share as you like within the parents, but you have some rules. You have a quota of 3 months for the mother and a quota of 3 months for the father, and 4 months in between that you can choose. And I took 2 months. My wife wanted me to take 2 months of the 4 that we could choose plus 3, meaning we would have a 50-50. We are splitting the parental leave. So that's how it started. And I started to tell my daily life with my children, and all of my stories were step by step shared in different media, such as the Huffington Post, that have some that give possibilities for bloggers to share their story on their media, and a lot of French media also were interested in exploring this Scandinavian model through my experiences. And something that I found extremely powerful in the Norwegian system is not only that we are alone as men to take care of the kids, so of course it has a strong impact in terms of gender equality and domestic care, and it's really a game changer when you think of how can you give more balance between professional and personal life. But also the Norwegian make everything for you to not be bored during that period. And you have a lot of activities that you can do as a parent with your children, with your child, in order to meet other parents, meet other babies during that period. So in my case, the municipality of Oslo, where we were based, the capital of Norway, offer a lot of places where you can go every morning with your child in order to meet other parents. So that's called the public kindergarten in a way. So that's where every day you can go and meet other parents that are like you in parental leave, so you can meet them. You have a lot of forest and mountains in Norway, so there is a lot of organizations that are arranging stroller trip in a way. So you go with your stroller and your baby, and you do 2 or 3 hours walk in the forest, and then you make your child eating, and it's very, very friendly. You have possibilities to go to church to learn some children's song with with some other parents. You have even the museums that are arranging some time for special visits for parents in parental leave, so that you can have a special guide for yourself. You have a baby swimming class, baby yoga class. You have so many opportunities to meet people. It makes the period not only social, but also entertaining. And this was a very, very, very different from what I was expecting. And it really helped me to enjoy my time with my child, with other parents. So I was very positive about this. About this model, the Scandinavian model, and I was definitely more and more sharing stories about it, blogging about that, to inspire the rest of friends, my colleagues and my friends in France, in order to tell them, hey, another model is possible. We talk about gender equality. We talk about that we as a man, we tend to work more and to go back to home much later, and then we are not doing so much at home compared to our wives, our spouse, our partners. Another world is possible, and it's just there, 2 hours flight from Paris. It's not like, it's not impossible, and I'm continuing not to talk, Karin, just because. But tell me if we need to. If you have a specific question, or if I should just continue.
Tristan, please continue. It is so fascinating. I'm just sitting here and I'm listening, because it's amazing. Because, and to your point, I think this really hit it home. It's a 2-hour plane ride and the world is 180 degree different, and it's within Europe as well, right? And it's just, and it's sort of like a completely a different mindset and on how to approach the early days of having a baby. And so now, one thing I'm curious about, are there like, you know, what would you say the percentage, or are there even like you know, say daycares for parents that bring their children back earlier, or is it literally that it's pretty much everybody who takes off from, you know, going to the office for the first 10 months of their child?
Yeah, the system is made so that you don't have any public care or child care or kindergarten before the child turns 1 year.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it's an investment decision from the state. They say, the Norwegian state say, we pay you 100% of your salary to take care of your kids.
Right.
In exchange, we don't, for sure, they will not invest in facilities because it will be a double investment for them. So they say, somehow they save money on one side to give it to the parents on the other side. I see it that way. So that when you start when you become parent, you have these 10 months paid at 100%. You can choose 12 months paid at 80%.
Right.
And the state tell you, we guarantee your full salary. It's there is up to 6,000 euro a month, so still a good coverage. And then you need to wait a year to put your children in what they call the kindergarten. So you need, in that perspective, you don't have any alternative choice. And if you want to continue working, you need to pay a private. You need to go to a private system. And very, very few parents are doing that because it's very expensive and because it's not culturally accepted.
Yeah.
It's more when you are an entrepreneur, when you are liberal, of course, for this kind of jobs, you need to somehow find alternatives.
Right. Because that would be my question. I completely see if you're in an organization, but what if you are by yourself? Or that's and so now I mean, I think it is such an interesting model. I truly think. And so my question is then, how are the colleagues dealing with when, say, somebody is 5 months not at the workplace? How do companies cover?
I'd like to say first that it's so cultural in Norway that it's part of your role as manager to face that, because you know that whether it's a woman or a man,
right,
they might, if they become parents, they might live from 3 to 6, 7 months.
Right.
So it's part of your daily life as a manager. So first, culturally, it's really different versus France, where I don't know why the manager suddenly says, oh my God, she's going on maternity leave. I need to replace her and find solution. No. For them, it's part of the daily life. So it's integrating in the culture. I'd like to remind that this policy has started in 1990, so 30 years ago.
Right,
so
right.
For a manager, it's usual. And the process in place are very, in my case, at least in my company, were very clear. And my manager told me, because we need your skill and we will really need someone to replace you. I was accountable, I was responsible, I was in charge of replacing me. The manager asked you 6 months in advance, so that you tell them right in advance, can you please support me in finding a candidate that will replace you for your job, so that you can train this person, you can make sure that this person will be fully operational when you are on leave. so that this person will not disturb you when you are on leave. So you become also very involved into your replacement because you want this time to be as perfect as possible. And that was the case in my when I had to, when I was living 5 months. I found someone. It took time, but we anticipated a lot. In Norway, it's very, very important to give as much as possible the information that you are going to be parent in advance. That's a key successful criteria of your replacement, so that you have time to find the right candidate. People see it not as a challenge. Of course, sometimes it's complicated, but most of the time it's expected. So there is no drama. I have to say that you hear some stories that are a bit different, because sometimes companies don't say it publicly, but they can pay double the it's not legal, but they do that. They pay double the man so that they don't take the leave. And they pay, it happens sometimes.
Wow.
And so that the parents can pay for a nanny during the parental leave. It's not socially accepted, but in some cases, because of the expertise is difficult to find, the companies are doing that, and it's not legal either.
Right.
But you hear some stories here and there.
Wow.
Even in Norway, it's not always
Right.
100%
Right.
clear. Yeah.
But what listening to you, what I find so enlightening is that, as you said, the expectation is that whether a man or a woman, at some point they will take a leave because of having a child. And so in my mind, when somebody hires somebody, there is already then a reduced sort of unconscious bias against a woman, because they're like, oh, okay, it's going to be, either might be taking a certain amount of months off for parental leave, which I think is awesome. I really think, because I really feel that it helps from the beginning of when one hires people to, be more equal about it.
Exactly. I mean, like, potentially you take, I would say this, I say it in bracket, the same risk in a way if you hire a woman or a man, because I was away 5 months, and I even have a colleague who became mother and only took 4 months of parental leave. So
right,
you cannot discriminate based on gender, even though statistics show that still a lot of women take more of the shared parental leave, because of course they are breastfeeding, they gave birth, so they need more time for some of them. Then it's an individual decision, but conceptually the system is less discriminating than in the rest of Europe.
Yeah.
So I find it very powerful. And what also were very surprising for me is that I started to deep dive into different reasons of the why and who is supporting that, and even the union for employer, so not for employee but for our employer, which is quite big in Norway. It's called the NHO. Even they are strong supporter of long and shared parental leave, because they absolutely want the woman not to be away from the job market, and they need women to work. In Norway, the differences between men and women in terms of percentage of active worker is very limited. Is very small. 78% of men work. 75% of women are working.
Wow.
It's only 3 points difference. We have 11 points difference in France, even more in other countries. It's extremely egalitarian in that way.
Yeah.
And also, research in Sweden that have a similar system have shown that every additional month that a father take on parental leave is indirectly increasing a woman's salary of 6.8%.
Wow.
It's a study from 2010 from the Swedish government showing how important it is to balance parental leave, because difference in salaries doesn't really start after school or after university, but it really accelerates when we become parents. That's where we see mothers being a little bit more interested in the private and personal life, either by choice or by necessity. And men don't have to necessarily leave the job earlier or whatever, and then they start to increase the salary gap versus women. And that's why it's important, the shared parental leave policy. And I became a big activist on that question when I experienced it myself, because I was also seeing the positive part for my wife.
Yeah.
My wife suddenly was taking care of more responsibility in her work when I was taking care of our children.
Right.
So it's visible in a way. Yeah.
And and this is an interesting point I wanted to ask, is like, you said earlier that, you were basically feeling you were going to do this completely by yourself because you didn't have like, female relatives or any relatives with you in Norway, and you had not experienced that before. So what type of skills that you feel are transferable soft and business skills did you feel you learned during your time of parental leave?
The first one is probably planning, the planning part. We often talk with my wife that as such, doing an activity with a kid or with a child is very easy, or even with a baby, it's easy. Giving food, changing diapers, all of this is easy. The difficult part is just planning and anticipating, because it's not the same when you need 5 days a week on your own to have a planning and an agenda of what you are going to do every day, and make sure that you have the food, the milk, the diapers, the changing clothes, the pacifier. I forgot now all of the things that I had to do when I was in Norway, but
right.
The planning and anticipating, I had a lot of, I think I gained in skills during that period, and I could really relate into that when I was going back to work, because of course it's something that is helping managers in their daily life. The second one is patient. I was suddenly becoming very patient, which was not so much in my personality, and relation to time has changed. It's okay to be slow. It's okay to take time. It's okay to it's okay to enjoy long moments, to take the necessary hour to eat, to bath. I was suddenly less into rushing mode, but much more accepting that slow life is good life. And this, I think, is important also when you go back to the job, where everybody is stressed for not always for good reason. And somehow you take distance, you see a bigger picture. I think it was beneficial on that one. And then the last one probably is also, for me, I saw women differently when I came back at the job. I have to say that before this experience, when I was working with a lot of women that became mother, when they were back of their maternity leave to work, I found them a little bit boring, talking about their children. Like, it was not interesting for me. Suddenly they were talking at the canteen about, I don't know, diapers, difficulties that they had. It was very far from me, and I didn't find this very interesting. And now I'm really, really paying attention to all of this discussion because I think they are very important. That can be a demotivating factor of you at the work. So I'm always a little bit more carefully behaving with mothers back from maternity leave, making sure that they find the right space at the right time to get back on board. So that also changed me at the job.
That is so interesting, Tristan, and so important, because I feel often people still associate unpaid care work as being something that only mothers can do. And so the fact that you went through that experience yourself and you can relate and understand and appreciate, I think, if we sort of scale up your experience, like on a bigger picture, on worldwide, it would make such a difference from a entire gender equality perspective, just from that aspect of understanding what it was like, what it felt like, what maybe initially somebody, as you were saying, talking about diapers or these situations might appear boring or not something you can relate to, but now you remember, I'm sure, situations where you felt very similar, or that things that from the outside might seem like, well, I mean, to be honest, I remember before I had kids, I was like, well, how hard can it be? The kid sleeps, you give him something to eat, you have like some diaper changes, and that's it. And then when you are actually going through it, you're like, whoa, this is quite different. But then it's like, and then I feel, it doesn't matter how much you tell somebody that your life will change and that it is different. I think it's the moment the child is there and the acknowledgement and realization that one is 100% responsible for another human being. I think that stress is, especially when the child can't really say if something is wrong with him or her, is to me something that is like so underestimated before one has the child oneself.
True, fair, completely agree. And being exposed to that was really a game changer.
And so, I would love to go back to our earlier question. So, you wrote the blog, you experienced your life in Norway, taking care of your child. And how did you then decide to write a book? And oh, by the way, I would love to see the book in English one day, because my French is not good enough.
I hope we'll find a solution to have it translated in English. It's selling quite well in France. So if there is any English publisher that are interested into the translation of this book, don't hesitate to contact Karin or myself. I have a lot of English speakers that want to read the book in English, so for sure we can make it happen one day. Actually, if you imagine that I had 5 months of parental leave, I was blogging every day, writing a lot of articles, doing some videos. I had the French media coming to Norway to film myself and to explain the Scandinavian system. Then I had also started to influence the French politicians for them to take inspiration of the Nordic law to change the French law. I did lobbying. I did a lot. And suddenly, I had to go back to work and normal life again. And I say it's a pity that all of this work that I've been doing, this research, these stories, these meetings with different specialists of parental leave, it's a pity that I cannot make a book out of it, because then it could be a nice material to influence even on a different audience that people following your blog. And I just wrote on my blog, I'm looking for a publisher. And 3 weeks after, 1 month after, I had a publisher calling me. This is a hot topic in France. Parental leave is being debated. The Scandinavian are known for being advanced. So the publisher told me, like, I didn't have, I just say, I have 100 articles in my blog.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of research. I have a lot of media that can relate, can advertise and talk about the book when it will be published. So I didn't even have the story, huh? And they helped me to build the story of the book. I wrote all of by myself, but they had very good people to make the transition, to help you. It was a very good exercise to do with them. So that's how it went from a blog. I published an article looking for a publisher, and then 7-8 months after, we managed to produce a book.
That's amazing. And then talking about your advocacy in France about the lengthening of paternity leave, could you share with our listeners what has happened since then?
Yes. What happened is that I started to promote parental leave together with a lot of other people in France, some other fathers, association, organization, also a lot of companies in France created what they call the Parental Act, which was to give several weeks for the fathers when they become parents, so in order for the job market to be a bit less unequal or more equal. So a lot of different individual, I would say, individual initiatives done here and there in France to talk about, to promote parental leave, but nothing big and concrete to really influence the government. So what I did is that I wrote different tribunes. I met and I called the minister. I offered them my book. I explained, and I was invited to the government to explain in detail the parental leave system in Norway.
Wow.
And then I could also, with 10 other fathers that were also active in France, we decided to write a very big, what we call a tribune or an article,
mm-hmm.
to say to the government, no, it's time to change, because the French law of paternity leave started in 2002. So it was 20 years old.
Right.
And France was quite late versus many countries such as Portugal that has 4 weeks of paternity leave. Spain started to extend from 4 to 8 and to 12 weeks of paternity leave. The Nordics, as I said, are much more advanced. A lot of European countries were moving and France was not. So we wrote an article with an hashtag minimum 1 month. And because we were 10 bloggers, influencers that had a lot of network with the media and the politics, we were doing big noise with this article.
Mm-hmm.
And because Macron's government said that gender equality was one of the most important topic of his 5 years government,
mm-hmm.
I think it was 1 week after the article, we published the article, that they started to make the announcement to say, okay, we hear, we heard a lot of companies, we heard a lot of mothers, but now we are also hearing the new generation of fathers
mm-hmm.
that want the change. And I think the fact that the fathers
right.
were talking about it was new, because this topic is really owned by women today.
Right.
So the fact that it was young fathers from the new generation wanted to change, it made the government move quicker. I think they wanted to do it. They would have done it probably maybe in 6 months, 1 year, but then they really changed and they say, okay, let's double the paternity leave from 14 days to 28 days. That's what they did,
mm-hmm.
which is okay. And I like to say it's a good evolution, but not a revolution. Like, it's a change, but it's not a revolutionary change. It's not what I wanted to do. because I would have preferred them to take inspiration of like of the Nordic model with a parental leave. But you cannot ask for everything. I mean, you have to be pragmatic. And what I liked a lot is that the French, I felt we were heard because the French government decided that the paternity leave the 20 days could be taken whenever the father wanted to, up to 6 months of the baby.
Okay.
So that if you want to take it after the maternity leave, a little bit like the Norwegian model, you can do it. And I think it goes in the right direction, and that you can be listened when you do blogging, and that it just starts with some stories and it finishes with influencing government. It's a good sign that we can all individually influence, and that's cool to have this as a possibility. You don't need to. You don't really need to. It makes things possible. That's what I wanted to say. And also, when I was invited by the United Nations, that's to talk about my experience. I realized that even from their perspective, from the United Nations perspective, when they invited me to talk about it in a Generation Equality Forum, together with people from government from Mexico or Canada or the US, for them, they also value the work that you do as a blogger, as a podcaster, as an influencer to change the gender norm. And having the blessing from such an organization that we influence, we act, we make a change, was also a very big recognition, and that I was very honored that they value the work that is done by a lot of fathers like me in the change.
I thought that was so awesome when I saw that you were, at, as you said, the Generation Equality Forum. And because I think it is so important from my perspective, we need more father role models to make other men realize that it is possible, that it is, as I said earlier, anybody can do care work. And the more positive role models there are, the more it will hopefully inspire other dads and other organizations and governments around the world to make that change. So I'm super appreciative for all the work you have done, Tristan.
Thank you, Karin. And one thing that I didn't say in the Generation Equality Forum, and I take advantage of having you today, that is from Norway, that I wanted to, when they asked me what can we do to change and to make male more accountable for care at home. One thing that I discovered in Norway, I don't know if you have it in Canada, in the US, is men's quota.
I don't know.
Gender equality started with having women's quota in politics or in board in order to create the role model for a lot of women. And I think this policy has worked quite well, because today it's more balanced, it's more healthy. You see talented women everywhere. It worked. Mm-hmm. But the other side of the gender equality, to think of in industries or sectors where men are underrepresented.
Yeah.
Why don't we have men's quota? And Norway has introduced some of this already. In the daycare of my children when I was living in Norway, it was men working there. Wow. And they had, they don't say it quota, they had objective of 10 to 12% of men working in daycare nationally, so that it's not only women that take care of the baby. I was reading an article in Norway that, because I'm part of an organization that's called the Men in Kindergarten, that was shocked because 1,000 kindergarten are not employing men. And for the Norwegian, it was a big shock. But for many, for a lot of countries, it's just like this for all of the kindergarten. But for Norway, the fact that in some cases, you cannot even have a man taking care in a staff of 5, 7, 8 people, taking care of children in age from 1 to 5 is not normal. You should have this representativity also at the beginning of the life, because that's also the role model that you give.
Absolutely. I mean, thank you so much for mentioning this, Tristan, because when I talked a few weeks ago with Abdagak, who is one of the co-authors of the State of the World's Father Report, and, where Gary, the CEO of Promundo, which is the organization that wrote this, was also at the Generation Equality Forum, it was so interesting that in there they were saying that it will still take at least 92 years to get, with the current rate of change, to get to equal unpaid care work, and that they have not really found a country where it is actively, having a timeline and a policy to get there. And then they couldn't really find anything where it was promoting, similarly to the STEM program, the opposite for boys, care and education profession. So to me, this is, I had not heard about that men's quota, but that goes right along the actions that Promundo is suggesting to have to happen in order to get more towards a gender equality. And I also feel, simply from a children's perspective, if a boy or girl sees a male preschool teacher, that is to them a normal thing to do. It's normal, right? Versus if they only see female preschool teachers, they might never think that could be a potential job option. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and not only that, it could be an expected job for them, but also the expectation of the father at home when you have men taking care of you is very different. Even for me as a father, when I knew that my boy was in a school where other men were taking care of him, I also wanted, then first I was really connected into that school because I was talking a lot with the men of the school, because I don't know why, but naturally it's easier sometimes to talk to men. That's how we are done. But also the fact that if my boy has some role model in school, I also want to be a role model for him. I don't want to disappoint him. And I think this way of thinking hasn't gone through yet in many countries. We are still seeing gender equality, and that's also what sometimes I feel lacking in the UN Women Forum for women, for girls, is that it's still a lack of looking at it from a man perspective, because I find it was not enough men in the discussion. Sometimes we were maybe 2 or 3 men in 100 speakers, and it's a pity because diversity brings value, and the Norwegian experience for me is really astonishing in that way. Even the University of Bergen and Oslo in social science, because they had too many women and not enough men students, asked officially for quota of men because you create value by the diversity. And we need more of those ideas to make the big change in the world. And we cannot only think about women's quota. We now need to think about men's quota. That's the next step.
I mean, I couldn't agree with you more, because I feel often the emphasis keeps on being, we need to change women, we need to, and people forget that if you don't change the other half of the world by making more opportunities for men to do unpaid care work, to be more involved in professions that are focused on, education, caring, it's not going to happen. And that's one of the reasons, to be honest, why I have you on the show and other father advocates, because how else is it going to happen, right? So so I'm super appreciative. That's so interesting.
I think I will write one or two articles about it because I feel it's a new territory that we all need to look at. And also, I feel when we look at research and an impact on gender equality, on norms, on new rules, we don't necessarily grasp everything by research. You don't grasp the fact that I was saying that men's quota is not only about the number of men, it's also the fact that what is a man at a kindergarten impacting around him, the children, the father. But even in the case of Norway, what I found completely game-changing as well when I discovered this 5 months of parental leave is that young boy, or teenager, or 20, 22 years old boy or man, they know in Norway that when they are going to be fathers, they are going to take care of their kid at least 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. They care. They care about children education already at that age. Contrary to my French teenagers that don't care at all because it's not part of their system. Right. And this kind of stuff, I'm not sure are really assessed properly by the statistics. And I think that's why it's important for governments to dare changing and to take a bit of risk now with new policies, because having 40, 45, 50% of women in government, it's not the topic anymore. Now we need to change a bit the conversation, I think. But very appreciating that you support the idea, Karin.
Yeah. Well, it's been so nice to talk to you, Tristan. So now, is there anything that we have not covered yet that you want to make sure our audience hears?
No, I think I talked too much. I covered a lot, maybe a little bit in different perspective, but I hope that it gave people the willingness to learn about the Scandinavian model, for those who speak French to visit the blog and to see how it is to be a man there. And all in all, I'm very appreciating that you give this opportunity through such podcasts for men to share openly gender equality topics. I think it's very important. I think we should talk more. I don't think that it's so much. How can I say it? Like, as I said in the beginning, it's not going to kill your career because you talk about that. It's okay. Right. It's safe. It can even make you a more appreciated manager because you are human. There is no danger in sharing every opportunities and challenges that you have as a that are covering the gender equality topic.
So now I just wanted to make sure that people know how to, find your work and, online. What, social media platforms can they find you?
So I have a blog on WordPress called barbapapa.blog. Mm-hmm. I have a Facebook page, Barbapapa. I have an Instagram, Barbapapa, and on LinkedIn, Tristan Champion. And that's a good start.
Okay, that's what I will do. I will put that all in the show notes, and I will also put the link to your book. So anybody who speaks French can read it. And maybe at this point we could do another shout out if there is anybody listening who is a publisher for an English speaking organization, because I would love to read the book in English one day. Yes.
Thank you, Karin.
Thank you so much for talking to me today, Tristan. It was really, really wonderful.
Thank you.
What a wealth of information and so many thought-provoking ideas and examples. One of the things that really stood out to me was when Tristan was saying another world is possible 2 hours flight from Paris. So I would like to leave you with some thoughts and questions. For example, do you know anyone who currently is on paternity leave? How did they decide that they were going on paternity leave? Is it an extended paternity leave? Did they have role models? In your country, in the care and education profession, do you know many male professionals? And if so, have you ever spoken to them to learn more how they decided to go into this profession and what they would like to see to maybe have more male role models, more male professionals? And then lastly, in your own organization, are there role models? Are there senior business leaders who themselves have taken extended paternity leave? And how is care being talked about in your organization? Are people concerned by taking parental leave that it will hinder their careers? Or by contrast, are people returning and the transferable skills that they have learned are emphasized and utilized to help them grow further in their career? And finally, is in your organization the expectation that at some point during their career, anyone is going to take some time off for care work or caregiving? Thank you so much for listening to the show. We hope you gained valuable insights and new ideas. To keep listening to future episodes, please head over to iTunes or your favorite player and subscribe and give it a rating. We would very much appreciate a review and for you to share it on social media, so more people can start innovating in how they offer employment. Until the next time, goodbye!